Well, on today's episode, I'm joined by Martin Roberts, a Hillsborough survivor who's transformed unimaginable trauma into powerful mental health advocacy. As a teenager on the Leppings Lane terrace in 1989, Martin lived through a tragedy that shaped the rest of his life. Now, through his company Keep in Mind Limited and his talk, A Walk in My Shoes, he's helping the football community and far beyond understand the long-term impact of trauma and the strength in speaking out. Martin, pleasure to have you on, and thanks a million for agreeing to talk to me.
No, my pleasure, Richard. Nice to meet you. No problem.
Yeah, you too. I can't start this conversation, Martin, as I alluded to you just earlier, without making reference to that beautiful jersey behind you there.
Yes, it's a signed Brazil shirt by Carlos Alberto from the 1970 World Cup final.
Wow.
It's been stuck in a wardrobe for many, many years, and obviously with lockdown, I decided to redecorate one of the rooms and decided to put it on show, for a better word.
Well, it's fantastic. Yeah, as I said, you have a better backdrop than me, so maybe we can swap at some stage. Martin, it's obvious just from your backdrop, and I know I talked to you briefly before this chat here now, but
yeah,
it's obviously like you're a man who's passionate about football, and football runs through your veins, and probably through your family's veins, does it?
It does, yes. So I'm a long time Liverpool supporter, and the reason why I support Liverpool is my dad comes from Liverpool, but he was on the blue side. He was Evertonian, and he took me to my first game when I was about 7 years old, standing in the Kop. And I was hooked ever since, going to that first game, and throughout my life I've been following home, abroad, all over, and that was my life and my passion. And even my kids are a lot older now, they still follow them, but albeit they don't watch them. And yeah, I was a season ticket holder for many, many, many years. It's where all my money used to go to when I was at school. My spending money, my dinner money, I would save up to go and watch Liverpool the weekend. That was, I suppose what I live for to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's unbelievable because so many people do and still do, even though the game has gone global and it's so commercialised now. Football still holds such a very strong part in people's lives, doesn't it?
It does. I think it gives that connection. It's where you can forget about all the troubles that you may be going through and all the pressures that you're going through at work Monday to Friday. And it's something on a Saturday you can forget about everything else, but just focus on 90 minutes or the build up before, obviously. But you can just I suppose let off a little bit of steam. But going back to your point, it has become more commercialised. I mean, when I was going, it was just what I class as a true supporter, standing on the terrace in the cold, in the rain. But things have now progressed on. But yeah, for me, it was my passion, my life, the way that I could let some steam off, I suppose, when I was 18, 19, 20-year-old youth.
Yeah, and I suppose, and we will come to this in a while, but I suppose what happened in Hillsborough and in other places around the world, obviously, it's such tragedies, obviously is a bad thing, but there were plus sides to that. If you look at the way the stadiums are set up nowadays, football was always a business, but I suppose probably wouldn't have come on so far in terms of the way fans are catered for if it wasn't for such unfortunate events, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Hillsborough, Heysel, it's a shame it has to take such significant and traumatic events for things to change for the better. But the result of Hillsborough, you rightly point out, standing became, I suppose, obsolete, albeit they are bringing it back now in certain phases to some stadiums. But now it is a lot more safer than maybe what it was, when I was going, especially standing in a Kop with 15,000 people swaying from side to side. Now you wouldn't get that. Not that I would ever go and put myself in that position again. But it has become safer, more commercialised. That's for sure. And I suppose that will progress as the years go by. And it's nice in some respects it has become safer because at least families can go and enjoy that day out. Albeit, as we all know, it's very expensive to follow any club nowadays, especially in the Premier League.
100%, yeah. Martin, talk to me about little Martin, young Martin. Where did you grow up? Your family? Did you have siblings? And tell me all about that community where you grew up.
So I'm a Yorkshire lad through and through, born here in Halifax in November 1968. And I was born into what I class as a typical working class northern family. I had an older sister and a younger brother. And my parents, like I said, were very typical working class family. Went to senior school, Catholic school. We progressed through school. Obviously, got my qualifications, and then in those days, back in 1980s, your career, I suppose, not was chosen or defined for you. It tended to be you're going to insurance, or you're going to banking, or you're maybe going to university. University wasn't for me, absolutely, and I chose a path going into banking. Where I went to work for Barclays Bank about, I think, 1981, and then went through banking through my whole life until obviously events took place, and obviously a change, I suppose, direction, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I was very much brought on, right from wrong, and that's the family I was brought up in. That's something I try and instill now in my children.
And what was your community like? Was it a big town? Did you grow up in the city, Halifax, or did you grow up in the suburbs outside?
No, it's literally just in the town centre. It's it's not a huge town. It's a typical Yorkshire town. Nice green hills, loads of places to walk, but a typical, I suppose, working type of environment. So not a massive town, but it was a very, very close, close knit community. And people, I suppose, ask me to this day, well, why on earth did you then go watch Liverpool? And I suppose when I went through, Hillsborough, I was away from those events, away from the people, the city. It really impacted, and for me, that was to my detriment, which again I'm sure we'll talk about. But I didn't certainly support my local team as much as Halifax town. For me, my life was, going watching Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah, but I suppose again we'll go back to what we were saying earlier, Martin. That's what football is all about, and sport in general. It's very emotive, and you don't have to necessarily support the team that's on your doorstep. I mean, there's people here in Ireland who religiously go over to England week in, week out to support Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, or whatever. And then when Ireland play England, they'll slag England off. So it's a very emotive and kind of it varies, doesn't it? It varies a lot, like.
It does, and you're right to point out. When I used to go watch Liverpool, I know a lot of people that came up from Dublin, from Ireland, on a regular, every single week, and that is some devotion to follow your club and coming over the North Sea, the Irish Sea, to go watch your club. That's some going.
And tell me about your father and mother. What kind of people were they?
So my dad, he used to work in the carpet mill, and then he used to worked for the Halifax Building Society as one of their property managers. My mother, she worked mainly part time, because I suppose in those days, the role was then to look after children. Yeah. So my mother worked part time once we started going to school, etc. My mother died about 10 years ago of dementia, relatively young. My dad now is retired, and he just enjoys himself going out walking. He's a very active 83-year-old man who literally day in, day out will walk 6 miles a day without fail. And I suppose many of the traits I've followed on come from my family, who set us, both me, my brother and sister, up, set us up for life in general. They gives that first step in that ladder, the rights from the wrongs, and it's something that you're always trying to instill in your own children, because you always want the best for your own children, no matter what the case. Absolutely, and you've set it up nicely there. You come from a normal family, siblings from a small town in Yorkshire, and we'll move straight to that day, then that fateful day, where you and thousands of people similar to yourself made their way to Sheffield to watch a game innocently. You know what I mean? Absolutely. And just talk me through about the day itself first, Martin. Even the excitement of getting up and going to it. So I remember the 4 weeks before going over to Anfield to get my ticket for the semi-final, because obviously living in Halifax, I had to make that extra journey to go get my ticket. So it was, the week or a couple of weeks before, it was just that excitement knowing a game we're in another semi-final of the FA Cup. Then I remember the day, the Saturday morning. It was a glorious, cold but sunny, glorious day. And I went to the match with my uncle. He also used to go watch Liverpool, but my ticket was in Leppings Lane in Pensay, which also with a fatal pen as well. And my uncle was in the main stand. And he picked me up early that morning, probably about 10 o'clock, and we travelled over in the car to Sheffield with just pure excitement that potentially we're one step away or one game away from going and watching the final again at Wembley. And we got to Sheffield, parked up in a pub car park, and I know there was a lot said about supporters and wrongly about the way they thought the supporters behaved. And we then parked in the pub car park, had a drink, and then walked to the stadium, which was about 3/4 of an hour away, but we preferred to park away from the stadium, just to more of ease than anything.
And tell me, Martin, sorry to cut across you there, but how old did you say you were at this point?
I was 18. 18 that time.
So I can only imagine the excitement. And remember, it's not like nowadays where we're absolutely obliterated with content on social media about every angle of every game. I'm sure you were devouring the newspapers the week leading up to it and everything.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because in those days they didn't have mobile phones. And my build-up for the event was getting the daily newspaper, and I used to religiously buy the newspapers every single day, and if there was a sport article in Liverpool, I would cut it out. And when you used to go to school, we used to have big binders with all your learning material. my folders were just full of Liverpool material, and that was my build-up, was getting into it, reading what was in the news, seeing what was on TV, because like you might point out, there was no social media, so it was that continuous build-up. It's ironic that when I was at school at the time, there was I had a couple of best friends. One was a Manchester United supporter, an ardent Manchester United supporter, would follow them home and away, and would have a lot of banter pre-games. Then a week would come, and they would have a lot of banter post-games, and me and Cole would have a real good conversation before around what we think the score would be. So there was that continuous build-up, ready for that Saturday morning. That excitement, which goes back to it generally was a real excitement. As much as I was studying for my A-levels at the same time, I could not wait for Saturday morning, knowing that I was either getting on a coach to go down to London or a train, or go in this case to the semi-final with my Liverpool shirt. And I always used to wear my Liverpool shirt wherever I would go. So it was absolutely genuine excitement. Yeah.
So pick up on that point. You were parked the car, you had a drink, and you're making your way.
No alcoholic drink. Not that made any difference. And then we made his way down to Hillsborough. And I remember when we got going towards Hillsborough, it was busy, but I suppose no busier than any other football game I'd been to. And I always just loved the away games as opposed to the home games. But there was a real genuine good atmosphere. And I remember getting towards Leppings Lane, at the back of Leppings Lane, for probably about 2:20, 2:15. If you're going if people go to Sheffield, there's like big metal shutters, blue metal shutters. And as I started going towards it, I thought, it was getting busy, but it was good banter. There's a good crowd, having good laughs with the people. And I went through the turnstiles. Give me a ticket over. When you go through turnstiles at Sheffield, there's like three entrances. There's one to your left, one straight in the middle, which everybody can see, and then one to the right. And I went through, saw the pitch through this long tunnel towards Pensay, and I went through again with excitement. And I always just like to get to the football ground early. And the reason being is that I used to like to find a good position within the stadium, and so I could see obviously see the game, but get into a good spot and get into, I suppose, into the throngs of the crowd, because I was quite active singer, etc., etc. And I remember getting into Leppings Lane, and I remember the middle pen and then the two pens either side. And I made my way up about 3/4 of the way up, and I always used to go in front of the barriers, so it's got something to lean onto during the game. But probably about 15-20 minutes before the game started, I thought it just started getting really busy. And I was looking at other pens either side, noticing that they were quite empty, but the pen I was in, it just started getting really exceptionally busy. And it got to a point whereby you literally couldn't move, and I thought, yeah, so it's okay. I've probably been in certain worse situations for business at other stadiums, but then it just didn't feel right. And I remember the team came out to do the warm-up. It was all pure excitement, the good atmosphere, chanting, etc. And then just as the game started, I realised that I felt something wasn't right at that time. And I remember just after kick-off, I think we got a corner which John Barnes took, and I got to a point whereby I had my hands down the side of me, and I could not move my arms to either side. I couldn't move my arms so I could put them on rest on somebody. It became really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then I remember this almighty, it's not an explosion, like a crack. And I remember a crash barrier at the side of me, and it just snapped in half. And these barriers at the time were thick metal, solid metal barriers. And it just started, it cracked, and I saw people start going down. Oh. I thought, oh shit, I need to do something, I need to get out. And I started falling over. And
Martin, at this point, right, the game was, I can't recall how far into the game it went until the referee was alerted to what was happening. I know there was kind of a bit of pandemonium before, but I recall watching it on as a very young boy on Sports Stadium in Ireland, and George Hamilton and Johnny Giles were commentating. And I remember them, I look back on it on YouTube and years later, but I remember them making comment, there's something happening. How far was it through the first half that this happened, like?
6 minutes passed, literally with the first 5 minutes. As soon as kick-off game, I remember Ray Houghton did a long ball, and it went out, and we got a corner. That's when John Barnes took the corner, and literally was 4-5 minutes into the game. I think, going back to your point, Richard, I think people thought there was some trouble on the terms, because in those days, football hooliganism, it was a big thing at the time. But also where the Liverpool supporters were, we had the top tier and we had the bottom tier of the whole Leppings Lane. But I think first indication where people think, there's some trouble taking place in just behind Bruce Grobbelaar's goal. It literally was within those first 5 to 6 minutes. But when I heard and saw the crash barrier, I thought, I need to get out of here. And I remember starting falling over, and I remember somebody just grabbing hold of me from behind. And then I did, as the most horrendous thing a human being can do. As a father's husband, I had to climb. I literally climbed over men, women, and children to survive that day, because I realised I had to get from the little 3/4 of the way up of the terracing down to the bottom, and all I could see was this 15-foot fencing, but it was a fencing where it had like a curve at the top, so people now, in a normal circumstance, won't be able to climb over. I realised I just had to get down there and somehow get out. And
you must have been panicking, like.
Oh yeah, I was panicking. I didn't know what to do, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. I went to, I suppose, survival mode, in the fact that selfishly I did what I did to survive at this, I suppose, at the consequence of what happened to other people. But I suppose at the time, as awful as it thinks to say, I didn't think about those other people. I thought about what did I need to do to survive. And I give them, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for certain individuals who got me out that day.
Yeah.
And I got down to the bottom of the fence, and all I could see was 15-foot fence, thinking, how am I going to get out? And there's literally one small entrance into the terracing, which is, I suppose, like an emergency door. And I literally climbed over, was literally thrown over this 15-foot fence. And before I knew it, I was literally on the pitch while the game was still going on in Bruce Grobbelaar's goal, which there's a video which shows me on the pitch at the time talking to Bruce Grobbelaar to tell him what was happening, literally behind his goal. And when I turned round, I'll never forget the images I saw that day of people literally dying in front of me. It was just horrendous. And obviously the players then started going off, and then I went into some kind of survival mode. I think, well, I need to do something here, and literally with bare hands, with many other people, we tried to pull these barriers up, but it was futile because these were solid metal barriers. So it was a case of trying to get as many people out as we could, but there were people being sick. Literally, people just dying in front of you. But as an 18-year-old, you never expect, you don't expect anybody, regardless of your age, to find yourself in that situation. So how I got from the top end of Leppings Lane, Pensy, to then to literally on the pitch within what felt like a lifetime, but it must have only been minutes. It's just a miracle.
And what about, was it your uncle, you said, that went with you to the game?
Yeah, so he was in the main stand, top of the main stand at the other side. So he didn't know what was happening. Obviously, he could see the events unfolding. He knew that I was in that area, but he didn't know where I was or how I was. And going back to your earlier point about social media, those days we didn't have mobile phones. So my mum and dad, parents knew that I was at the football stadium, knew that I was in Leppings Lane, but for many hours. Since 6 minutes past 3, they didn't know if I was alive or dead because I could not make contact with them to let them know that it was okay. Because I just, like I said, tried to help other people whilst we were on the pitch. And as it shown on TV, we started pulling billboards up, started putting people on the billboards. And then at the back of Sheffield Wednesday, there's a gymnasium, and we were going backwards and forward to this gymnasium with people on the billboards, taking them, putting them on the floor, going back out, get some more, take them and put them back on the floor, not knowing if they were alive or dead. And obviously now it turns out that there were many people that we took to the back of Hillsborough and put them into the gymnasium who were probably alive, who could have still been alive today had they got the right medical treatment. But I didn't know what to do. It was just a case of trying to get them into a place where we thought they could get that care and that care and attention.
I can't imagine, Martin, just from that moment you described of the initial excitement of standing on the terrace and then seeing the players coming out for a warm-up, which as any person knows who's into football and goes to watch a game, is kind of it's a jolt of excitement to see your heroes out kicking about in the flesh, especially for an FA Cup final. And then within minutes you're literally fighting for your life, really. Like, can you tell me, as a young 18-year-old, and I know you've described it in portion, but I'm trying to get more into your kind of psyche because I'm trying to figure out how I would have felt. And I think I would have been very, very upset first. I probably would have been crying knowing me, and would have been kind of, like you said yourself, probably running around like a headless chicken wondering how can I help. How was it in that red hot moment? Like,
I mean, people say, was it anger? No, I don't think it was anger, because I didn't know who to direct my anger to. I think frustration, not being able to do more. But I suppose when you're brought up in a cocoon, but when you're brought up in a safe environment, from the way that your family look after, the way that family bring up, to then be exposed to an environment where it's not safe and you're not used to knowing how to react, you honestly don't know what to do. I was running around like a headless chicken, but I didn't know how else to react. And I say to many people, who is Martin Roberts now? I changed that day, 15th of April 1989, 6 minutes past 3. I changed as not just as a football supporter, but as an individual, as to who I eventually would turn out to be many years going forward. And my path could have gone in a totally different direction, but I suppose because I've never been exposed to fear, to danger, to dangerous environments, I just didn't know what to do or how to react. I thought I was doing the best thing, but like I said before, I have to live with myself around what I had to do that day to survive. And we didn't talk about mental health back in 1989. I'd never have a conversation with parents about my mental well-being. Not that I would have done anyway, but you didn't talk about it. So unbeknown to me, we all now know that not just our physical health, our mental health, the way that we look and support ourselves. It's a big thing as to who we are, turn out to be individuals. And not like I said, that defined me. That event defined me, but it wasn't, I suppose, the event that defined me. I generally believe it was my reaction to that event that defined me. The way that I put things to one side, the way that I've buried things really, really deep until eventually it all came to head some years later. Because, like I say, I didn't know how to reach out to and ask for help. Easy thing to say, easy thing to do, but as an 18-year-old, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to or where to get that help from.
And before we come to the point where you tell us about how it came to a head, I suppose on that day, as we go through life, we we're met with various different challenges, whether it's bereavement or, accidents or setbacks at work or life in general. Your soul kind of matures and it peels back another layer of skin, but your soul kind of opened a door that a young 18-year-old should never have to go through at such an early time, really.
It is, yeah. And I think you mentioned about we all go through life events. It's just the way that it turns out. Deaths, bereavements, etc. But sometimes you have time to prepare for those life events. Back in 1989, that day, nobody had any time to prepare for what's going to happen. So sometimes when you have that preparation, you can get yourself more comfortable with what's going to happen. Maybe it's a relative who's poorly, is then going to become, going to pass away. But nobody had the time to prepare what was unfolding on that day, and nobody envisaged both the scale of what's going to unfold on that day, and more importantly, the scale of what's going to unfold many years later as a result of the injustice that was put at the foots of the supporters and their families. I consider myself very, very lucky. There's 97 people who were lost on that day and years after, who the massive impact it's had on their families and friends. So I'm still here to tell this tale. And also the injustice that happened, but I think, like I say, it's not the event. Sometimes it's how we respond to it emotionally as well.